Hey guys, Boston Ramos. Yes, I know you haven't seen this mug in quite some time. It's been a minute since I've made a video. Uh, to be exact, it was very early in January when the Miami Dolphins were eliminated from playoff contention in Week 18 against the New York Jets, led by Aaron Rodgers, who will not be returning there. More on that in various videos in the future. Speaking of various videos in the future, I'm going to be making a bunch of videos regarding the offseason. I'm going to make big overview videos like this one, which is about the Miami Dolphins 2025 draft class. But I'm also going to be making some free agency ones. One just overall encapsulating free agency one. Then I'm also going to dedicate one to the entire undrafted free agency class of the 2025 draftees and all that stuff. So that's something that's going to be cool to look forward to. And then on top of that, I'm going to try to make videos that, highlight a player, maybe a couple players individually, very hone in on them and what they're about and what they bring to this Miami Dolphins team. That's something I look forward to making in the future. And that's going to be regarding free agency, the draft class. I'm probably going to do the whole draft class. And then on top of that, some key undrafted free agents who I think have a really good chance of making this 53-man roster, if not at least a practice squad for the Miami Dolphins. Now, with all that being said, let's talk about the draft. Miami Dolphins did not make the postseason, and it helped the chances in getting, a better draft pick and a better draft alignment. Um, but as a fan, you always want to see your team succeed and have success and go into the postseason having some success there and hopefully lifting the Lombardi Trophy. Now, the Miami Dolphins fans have not seen that in over 50 years, since 1973. So, hopefully the tides will turn and the Dolphins soon will be hoisting a Lombardi Trophy. That'll be a sight to see, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We're still in the offseason. Players, rookies specifically, have been reporting a rookie minicamp, which started this week. So I will make more videos about all this offseason stuff and getting into the action moving forward. But for now, let's start about this draft class because this is probably arguably one of the more interesting sides of the Dolphins offseason. Now, they went into this draft class having 10 total draft picks. Now, if you can't see yet, behind me, I have the 8 draft picks the Miami Dolphins left the 2025 draft with. Now, there were some draft moves. Some I may approve of, some I don't really approve of. It is what it is. I don't have any gripes to pick with the players that the Dolphins selected when they made some of these moves. It's more so the moves themselves. I'm like scratching my head. I'm like, dang, did we give too much there? We got a good return on that one, so on and so forth. So those are things I want to talk about. But let's talk about how the Dolphins went into this draft. They had 10 total picks. They had one in the first round, pick 13. Then they had another in the second round, pick 48. Round 3, they had a pick 98. They had 2 fourth rounders, pick 116 and 135. They had 2 fifth rounders, 150 and 155, and then 3 seven rounders at 224, 231, and 253. It's a lot of picks, and you can go about it 2 ways. You have a lot of picks to work with here. Do you want to trade a lot of draft capital, come away with less players? That's the approach that I felt that Will Grier and this Miami Dolphins front office went into this draft with. Like, hey, these are a lot of picks. Are all these guys going to make the roster, or should we make some moves up and ensure that we're drafting guys that we really want to make the squad? Now, in years past, there hasn't been too much of issue with all the draftees making the final 53-man roster for the Miami Dolphins. Hasn't been too much of a surprise. But there's always those undrafted free agent guys, free agency guys in general. So there's a big mix of guys alongside the guys you already have on your active roster who are still under contract with you for the remaining future. So those are interesting things to pull away from when you talk about how this Miami Dolphins team addressed their 2025 draft. Now, I'm going to go through these trades pretty much as they happened, right? So I'll go talk about the first round pick for the Miami Dolphins, and then we're going to talk about the second round and how the Dolphins traded up for a guy. Spoiler alert, they did. It's a while after the draft. I'm pretty sure you guys all know about it already. But let's start with how the Miami Dolphins went into this draft. According to lots of reporters, the Dolphins had various needs, and some of them included the offensive line, defensive line, cornerback, safety, and tight end. Now, if you don't know, the Dolphins lost Javon Holland in free agency, are shopping around Jalen Ramsey because they're both mutually looking to trade him away. So needed a cornerback as well. And the trenches have not been necessarily phenomenal for the Dolphins in the last couple of years. You know, sometimes the defensive line shows some flashes of greatness. Same thing for the offense. And then other times they're both in the dumps, either one at a time or both at the same time. So I think I agree with these needs. Another one was tight end. Uh, it's been an issue for the Dolphins for quite some time. Uh, Letting Gesicki walk definitely hurts in terms of having that tight end depth. I did love the contribution from Jonah Smith this past season, and I expect him to return and have such a great year with the Miami Dolphins and build off that success that he had in this previous year and be more of a focal point. But maybe some players that the Dolphins brought in that could be a little bit more enticing for Mike McDaniel and Tua in this upcoming offense for the 2025 season. Now, enough of all this mumbo jumbo. Let's get into the draft itself. And let's start with the Dolphins' first round pick. At pick 13, Dolphins select Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. Now, is this Stephen Ross behind the scenes saying, hey, let's get a Michigan guy on the squad? Possibly. But at the end of the day, I do love this selection. Now, as he did not have a massively productive junior season, it's eerily similar to his sophomore season. It's still very impressive. And the physical attributes for him really stand out to me. The fact that he can be such a force on the pass rush, on top of that, in the run stopping, and on top of that, he can chase after some guys that now, not a breaking away, but some of the defenders help slow him down. Kenneth Grant could be there to bring him to the ground. And that's something I do love about this guy. He has a high motor and he drives Big Mac truck into offensive lines. And that's something you want. He was Mason Graham's running mate there in Michigan, and he found ways to be pretty productive with not being the main guy. And that is some reason for concern, which I understand. We're not drafting the top pass rusher, run stopper, whatever it may be from Michigan. That was Mason Graham. He was already off the board by that point. But you are also getting the benefit of the doubt that you're not getting that much attention. So those are some of the concerns that should have been a little bit more productive. But then when he is being more productive, then it opens up Mason Graham. So it's a big teeter-totter type of thing. But without all that, I do love this pick. Here are some of his accolades from his time at Michigan. He's went there all 3 seasons. First year did not get too much playing time. Ended up only getting 8 tackles, but played in all 14 games as a backup. But then his sophomore season, the year they won a championship, pretty good. He ended up being second team All Big Ten. Started in 5 games. Had 29 tackles, 5 tackles for a loss, 3.5 sacks, interception, 6 pass breakups. Big guy, get up and clog up some passing lanes, etc. Now, his final season, his draft season for Michigan there, ended up being 3rd team Associated Press, All-American, 2nd team All Big Ten. Started 12 games. He had 32 tackles, 6.5 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks, and 5 PBUs, but he did not play in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Some other things we have here that have been posted for NFL's Prospect Insights. Here are some of his strengths listed here. Built with a broad chest, thick lowers, and long arms, capable of playing multiple spots on odd or even fronts. So pretty much he's almost an every down type of guy. Can absorb and split double teams when pad level is right. Possesses club strength to knock blocker off balance. Good strike and extended arm over release as a 2-gapper. Put together a solid performance and upset win over Ohio State. and then bangs around with heavy hands as an interior rusher. Dolphins need that, right? But let's talk about some of his weaknesses. Too often lacks explosiveness for dominant early phase reps, plays with tightness in lowers and a narrow base. Has a tougher time growing routes against angle blocks, limited range and short area quickness as a tackler, poor first step quickness to create advantage for his rush. So obviously, Dolphins see this and are like, hey, don't worry about all that stuff. We're going to work on this and hopefully build you up to have success when it comes to knocking these things out. Aside from that, he was a little inconsistent on tape in 2024, but he's going to be a freaky tester, and guys with that size and those numbers are really hard to find, according to an NFC area scout. Now, I, for one, did not like this pick at first. Then it grew on me. And then I'm like, oh, all right, the wheels are starting to turn. I'm starting to see why the Dolphins like this guy so much. You pair this guy up with Zach Sealer and the plethora of pass rushers that the Dolphins are going to come into this season with, Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, Job Robinson. This could be a very big time moment for this Dolphins defensive line. So I love the addition here. Now, do I feel like there were other players available on the board that the Dolphins could have drafted? Definitely. The only other need that I felt the Dolphins should have addressed was offensive line, and there was still a plethora of offensive linemen on the board. By that point, there were 4 offensive linemen taken. Now, Tyler Booker was taken in the pick above. He was an offensive guard out of Alabama. Was that a reason that the Dolphins were like, hey, that was our offensive lineman. We didn't get him. Let's move on to our next plan and go on the defensive side of the ball, Kenneth Grant? More than likely. But, there was still Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State, who was an absolute unit that could play almost any position on the offensive line. He ended up getting taken 5 picks later by the Seattle Seahawks at 18. I think in that sense, Dolphins maybe could have gone there. Maybe they felt like they were reaching. Who knows? At the end of the day, pretty satisfied with this Dolphins selection of Kenneth Grant at pick 13. And on to the second round we go. Now, the Dolphins came into this draft with pick 48 in the second round, which, is a bit further down than where they ended up at. The Dolphins traded away pick 48 in the second round, along with pick 98 in the third, and pick 135 in the fourth, for 2 picks with the Las Vegas Raiders. They traded for pick 37 in the second round and pick 143 in the fifth round. I think in terms of trading assets, this was a bad move for the Dolphins. I think they gave up a little bit too much here to move up about 8 spots. I don't think it was about 11 spots. Yeah, 11 spots. I don't think that was the best possible move the Dolphins could have made in that exact moment. So it was a little bit upsetting, especially when you look at the results of the draft picks following that. I think the Dolphins could have stayed put and possibly still gotten their guy. So that's where I'm a little more upset at. But I do love this pick. The Dolphins ended up picking Jonah Savaiinaea out of Arizona. He's an offensive guard, and he has some ties to our quarterback here. Both Polynesian guys, and something that Jonah said when the Dolphins drafted him is it was destiny, and he's only blocked for Polynesian quarterbacks his entire life. And he's happy that that gets to continue along when he goes into the NFL, which I find a bit touching. I find it pretty cool that that is something that has been following him his entire career. And it's just so cool that the Dolphins have found a way to, 1, protect Tua, and then 2, find the guy he's familiar with, who he has some type of already established relationship with, and it's also addressing the offensive line. Now, coming into this draft, Jonah Savaiinaea had pretty some interesting accolades. He was honorable mention at the All 12 Pac 12 conference. Started all 12 games as a right guard. And that was his first year in Arizona. His following season, was also another honorable mention All Pac 12. He started 13 games. But he had 3 at right guard and 10 at right tackle. So he's a little bit versed, right? Something I mentioned with the previous round where Gray Zabel could put him anywhere. Now, I'm not saying we can do this with Jonah, but look at this. Year 2024. There was another honorable mention, but this time with the All Big 12 conference. They did change realigned conferences for them there. He started 11 games, had 5 at left tackle and 6 at right tackle. And he was also listed as a team captain. Those are some attributes I do like to see in a guy who can be very versed. And then on top of that, he can be plug and play in any position and a leader. And that's something that I feel is very necessary for a lot of these guys that you draft relatively early. Now, 5 picks into the second round, this guy's damn near a first rounder. And I think I like how the Dolphins were able to get him when they got him. But that is also the other gripe I have to pick. So the Dolphins, with the 5th overall pick in the second round, went with an offensive guard. The next offensive lineman wasn't drafted until the Dolphins' initial pick at 48. Now, did they want to get ahead of the New England Patriots, who was a following pick? Possibly. I do think that is something that was in the Dolphins' mind. But all in all, I like the pick. Didn't like what the Dolphins had to do to get him. That's what it is. All right, let's look at NFL's overview of Jonah here. Durable 3-year starter who's built like a right guard but has valuable protection experience as a collegiate tackle. Jonah doesn't have the athleticism to stick at right tackle in the NFL, but can play there in a pinch with some help. He's very wide and can engulf smaller opponents as a base blocker while stealing off double teams and down blocks. His feet often deaden on contact, creating opportunities for defenders to leak through his edges in both the run and pass games. Jonah's size works to his advantage, and he could become a serviceable starting guard in time. Now, we're going to go through some of his strengths. Some of that was listed in his overview. Dense frame with excellent thickness through limbs, patient with hands but fires them with timing and accuracy, uses posture and core to control rushers once he's locked in. Space-eating frame will be tough to beat quickly inside. Able to shove angle blocks around with upper body strength and does a nice job of finding and fitting up second-level targets. Now, in some of that highlight video that you're going to see, he does that. He excels to that second level and continues blocks downfield. That's something that's very interesting. Along with his pass protection, he has a great run block ability, and he can understand, I've already blocked this guy. My runner is near me. Let's keep on progressing downfield and see how we can, elongate this run. That's those things I do love to see. Now, some of his weaknesses. Has trouble setting heavy and anchoring against bull rushers, below average recognition and response to twist, doesn't bend and slide well enough to protect his inside edge, lacks leverage and hand placement as a drive blocker, falls off base blocks due to inconsistent body control. Now, all that being said, I do love what he could bring to the table. As we progress through the draft, there are things that we're constantly going to be having to talk about. What are their strengths and weaknesses? He has a lot of strengths. He also has a lot of weaknesses. But I do love his presence. I hope they have already a well-established bond, him and Tua. And on top of that, I just love his instinctiveness, and his versatility is also a big-time plus for me. Being able to play almost every position on the offensive line except left guard and center. But I'm pretty sure in a pinch he can play in almost any position, which will be cool to see. But yeah, I just love what he can bring to the table, and I just think he's going to be a good locker guy for this Miami Dolphins team. And now we're on to day 3. as I mentioned in the previous pick, the Dolphins traded away their third round pick, and you know that's what left me scratching my head. I'm like, there was a lot of valuable guys that the Dolphins still could have, addressed and gotten some guys early on. It is what it is. I do like all these picks that the Dolphins make. I'm not necessarily massive fans of it, but I'm also not, I don't know, understand why they took them. I can see the vision here. Now, with that being said, not a fan of getting rid of, some decent day two picks that the Dolphins could have had. But neither less here or there, we're gonna go straight into day three, where the Dolphins uh, had a interesting pick lined up at 116, but they traded out of it to the Houston Texans. So yes, another draft day trade. This one I find a little more interesting, and I think the Dolphins got a lick back in terms because they had pick 116 and a four, which is a fourth round pick, and pick 224, which is a seventh round pick. They traded that to Houston. In return, they got pick 179, sixth round pick, and then they got a 2026 third round pick. So, you win some, you lose some. I do think the Dolphins made some ground there. They were the valuable ones in terms of making that trade there and getting out of that spot. Now, let's see what the Houston Texans went with at that pick. They went Woody Marks, running back out of USC. I don't think the Dolphins were in the market for a running back at that point. But, it is what it is. We're going to progress on to round 5 because that's where the Dolphins' next pick is at. Dolphins got an interesting guy here with defensive tackle Jordan Phillips out of Maryland at pick 143 in the 5th round. Now, this guy bounced around a bit. He played in Tennessee, then ended up finishing off his collegiate career in Maryland. But, there's a lot of work to be done here with him. But I think there's a lot of raw talent that the Dolphins can address. And if you can maximize a lot of that raw talent, I think it could be very beneficial for the Dolphins in the long run with Jordan Phillips here. And it's another Jordan Phillips that the Miami Dolphins drafted. I don't know if you guys recall. I believe it was in around 2015. The Dolphins drafted a guy named Jordan Phillips. He's still in the NFL. Most recently that I recall is with the Buffalo Bills. But aside from that, let's talk about some of his accolades or just history in general. He was redshirted in Tennessee. He only played in 3 games as a reserve. He ended up getting 1 tackle. Alongside that, in 2023, he played all 13 games with 11 starts. He had 28 tackles and 1.5 tackles for a loss. So has ability to make plays and wrap up guys, but not necessarily getting to the quarterback, more so of a run stopper and reading that type of stuff. He started all 12 games in 2024. He had 29 tackles and a tackle for a loss. So not a massive improvement from 2023 to 2024, but it does show consistency. So let's look at his scouting overview here. And he's a powerful nose tackle known for his work ethic and leadership. Phillips is a compact and explosive at the point, but is inconsistent at controlling blocks quickly enough as a read and react defender. He can be quick off the snap, but lacks fluidity and tends to get sealed by move blocks. In general, he's gap sound and can be hard for blockers to finish. He has yet to display he can provide pass rush production, which I do agree. So he will need to prove that he can at least be a run plugger in the pros. Now here are some of his strengths and weaknesses. Strengths: explosive hips with twitchy upper body. Generates instant press and separation at point. Can spring into gaps off the snap and penetrate upfield. A spin counter that can peel him off the block. Secondary effort to strain and maintain gap integrity. Uses slap to arm over by bypass block. Weaknesses: initial strike comes in 2 segments instead of a fluid motion. Gets too far out over his pads, limiting his 2 gap control. Fails to read and mirror lateral blocks quickly enough, and below average shedding timing as a potential tackler, has no sacks over 2 seasons at Maryland. While I do agree, his pass rush ability is not great, and his stats aren't, otherworldly. We are talking about a fifth round pick here. The pickings get a little bit slimmer here, but I do agree with a lot of those analysis. You know, he has very, very explosive motor. I think we need to get a little bit more out of him in terms of his hands and his ability to read blocks and dissect, run, pass, etc., and determine whether or not he could inject himself into the backfield to blow up a run, or vice versa, to sack a quarterback on a pass play. Not expecting him to get lots of playing time early on in his tenure with the Miami Dolphins. Hopefully, the Dolphins can continue to develop him and make him into something pretty good. But for the time being, he will definitely be a depth type of selection, and hopefully, I would like to see him get some playing time throughout the season. But in the meantime, would love to see nothing more than just the progression. You know, he already has all those explosiveness. Now it's time to make it into a fluid motion. Like I said, it had two motion, right? Right? You need to make it one. So those are things that we're looking forward to with this selection by the Miami Dolphins with Jordan Phillips. We're going to stay in the fifth round here with another selection at 150, and that is cornerback Jason Marshall Jr. out of the University of Florida. And this is also a local guy. He is very touted after player early on in his career. I will say 2024 may have not been his year, unfortunately. He did miss it with a shoulder injury, but most of his time before that, pretty damn well. All right, let's talk about some of his high school. He was a top 5-star recruit, top 30 overall prospect nationally. And in 2021, he played in all 13 games with 7 starts. He had 23 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, an INT, and 3 pass breakups. He also led the Gators in 2022 with 8 pass breakups, started all 13 games, and had 29 tackles, tackle for a loss, and INT. 2023, he led the team with 10 PBUs and started all 12 games, 26 tackles total, 3 tackles for a loss, and 1 sack. And then in 2024, he started the first 7 games and then suffered his season-ending shoulder injury. Up until that point, he had 20 tackles, 1.5 tackles for a loss, 4 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. So this guy knows how to play ball. I do think the injury did affect him in his draft stock. If otherwise, we probably would have been talking about a day 2 guy at worst. So while it is unfortunate for him in terms of his draft stock and etc., I think this is a big plus for the Miami Dolphins, especially addressing some of the recent needs at the cornerback position. So that is something that I do look forward to. And he's also a hometown kid, and you always got to love those hometown guys. That's something that, for me, that speaks volumes, and that's going to be something that is going to help this guy really propel himself into this team and be a big-time part of the team. And I honestly think he could be a very big-time contributor early on in his career, especially given the recent news of Jalen Ramsey and the possible trade out of him. Now, let's look at some of the overview. Outside cornerback with good size, athleticism, and experience, but too much inconsistency on tape. Marshall can disrupt the release from the press and ride run routes, turns to stay in position to defend the throw. He falls asleep against play action and misdirection. Also, he has poor hands when it comes to time to flip the field. For his size, he's a disappointing tackler, especially in run support. The lack of urgency and determination Marshall shows on tape could hurt his stock, and I think it did, along with the injury. Some of his strengths is he possesses prototypical size for his position, big punch jolts receivers as a press blocker, smooth movements to trace the route break, good knee to bend to fluidity, transitions, has size and strength to hinder catch space. Weaknesses, falls asleep against play action and misdirection, left interceptions on the field because of poor catch coordination, doesn't play with enough determination when he falls behind on a play, slips inside blocks and loses contain against wide runs, catches more contact than that he delivers as a tackler. So one thing that says is he needs to be a little bit stronger and more assertive with his tackling right there on the end. Catches more contact than he delivers as a tackler. On top of that, the lack of focus is definitely something that is a concern, but I do think this guy has the physical attributes and hopefully the right mindset to be a well contributor to this Dolphins defense. Now, with that being said, that is including his ability to dissect plays. It's a play action. Stay with your guy, so on and so forth. So those are some concerns. Hopefully, he could address it, but I do think the physical attributes here for Jason Marshall Jr. is outstanding, and I think he has big time potential to make it onto this roster. Not only that, but being a very big time contributor and possible starter for this Miami Dolphins team moving into 2025. Now, we're looking at the last pick in the fifth round for the Dolphins, and that is pick 155. This is from the previous trade with Denver. And we selected safety Dante Trader Jr. out of Maryland. So we got Jordan Phillips earlier, and now we're coming away with another turban in Dante Trader Jr. Very decorated player, but interesting enough, started off his career as a lacrosse player. He was one of the top lacrosse recruits in the nation as a midfielder. Originally signed with Maryland to play lacrosse. He played 12 games as a reserve with 16 tackles, a tackle for a loss, and a PBU in his first season with Maryland. And then he started all 13 games in 2022 with 62 tackles, 2 interceptions, 4 pass breakups. 2023 started 12 games with 53 tackles, 2 interceptions, 6 pass breakups. And he also joined Maryland's lacrosse team. He played in all 16 games, earning USILA third team All-American honors. In 2024, honorable mention All Big Ten Conference, started 10 games, 59 total tackles, 1 interception, 4 pass breakups, and missed 2 games due to injury. Aside from that, some of the stuff I've seen on tape from this guy is, everything you want to see from a safety. A guy who can, read and dissect plays, blow up, wide open pass lanes and cut them off, and come away with an interception. On top of that, blowing up runs. Those are things that you really want from a guy who's going to be commanding pretty much the entire back end of the defense. And that's something that he did display in his time with Maryland. Let's look at his overview. He's a dual sport athlete whose film shows off plus instincts but average consistency. Trader is a versatile cover safety capable of lining up at nickel, playing single high, or lurking in the role of a robber. He's quick to read and respond to the quarterback's eyes and operation, attacking throws at a disruptive angle when he can. He's athletic with good short area burst, but his play speed in large spaces is average. He's quick to diagnose and race downhill, but more of a worker than a true enforcer in support. Trader's football character and scheme versatility help his cause. He has a chance to earn a spot as a backup. Now, that last line there, has a chance to earn a spot as a backup. While I do think he's going to start off the year as a backup, I do possibly see him transitioning to a starter at some point by the end of this year. Right now, the safety competition is not very high for him, especially with the departure of Javon Holland. But still, I do like what he brings to this team, especially at that pick, at that point. I think he's a very physical beast who has, some technique to work on in terms of more so play recognition and, the instinct to, I'm a sellout for this run. I'm going to, cut off his passing lane, etc., etc. Some of his strengths are two-sport star lacrosse with good physical and athletic traits. Looks to meet runners as close as possible to the line. Willing to fill missing run fits and play contain when needed. Coverage instincts and throw anticipation are all over his tape. Reads quarterback for early advances to the target. closes quickly on pass catcher and reps to finish. Weaknesses: need to diagnose a route instead of assuming it. Desire to make plays pulls him out of position at time. Average anticipation of route breaks from off man and in the slot. Lacks early acceleration in his turn and chase. Looks more comfortable being around it than it is as a striker. So there are some things that I don't necessarily 100% agree with. I do think his ability to make big time tackles and you know find ways to blow up plays, whether it's in the running or passing game. So those are some things that I do disagree with his weaknesses. It's more so of the consistency thing. Now, how does this translate to the NFL levels? Those are things we're gonna have to wait and see when it comes to his time as a Dolphin throughout the training camp, preseason, and going on to the regular season. But early, so I want to see what his ability is as a full time safety, not necessarily being a backup guy, plug and play type of guy. I would love to see what versatility he can bring. But some of his measurables are pretty interesting to me. He's below 6 feet. Unfortunately, he's listed at 5'11". So, I think ideally safeties, 6'1", 6'2". I know it's a couple inches, but those 3 inches make a big difference. It's something that, you want some of that size there, but there's been plenty of smaller guys who've been able to get the job done. Prime example, Buda Baker. So if he can channel some of that energy, I think the Dolphins got a decent selection there within their last pick in the 5th round. And that's that with the 5th round. Now it's time to get on to the 6th round. And arguably one of my favorite pick per selection area in the entire draft. And that is the Dolphins' 6th round pick via Cleveland and Houston, the trade that the Dolphins did with Houston. This was their 6th round pick from Houston. Pick 179, running back Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State. Man, oh man, the fact that this guy was available this late in the draft, I understand some of his recent struggles, and some of his complications heading into the draft. But this guy's a surefire star. And the fact that he was available when the Dolphins got him is quite astounding to me. And I think the potential is endless for him here coming into the Miami Dolphins organization. I do love what he can bring to the table. And, unfortunately, he had some hiccups in his draft season, like his last year at Oklahoma State. But heading into this past season, he was, a potential Heisman candidate. He was arguably one of the top running backs in all of the country. So, let's not take that with a grain of salt. I think this guy definitely had some unfortunate moments last year. But aside from that, has massive, massive, massive contributions that he could bring to his Dolphins organization. And I'm really excited to see what he can bring to the table for Miami. Now, with that being said, let's talk about some of his time in Oklahoma State. He played in all 13 games in his first year there with one start. I'm not going to go too much into the stats here, but you can see it here on the screen for yourself. Moving on to 2023, he won the Doak Walker Award as the nation's top running back, first team Associated Press All-American, Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, first team All Big 12, led FBS with 1,700 rushing yards and 2,000 yards from scrimmage. Absolutely, phenomenal performance for him that year. And unfortunately, in 2024, when he had a bigger role and just a lot of hype up to him, did not live up to expectations. He had a rough start to the season with in July 2024 suspicion of DUI, but regardless of that, was able to still play in all games, all 12 games this year. He was an honorable mention All Big 12, led team with 880 rushing yards and 13 TDs. But aside from that, definitely some questionable stuff that happened this past year, and that definitely did not help him. But in the long run, I love this selection for the Dolphins, and I think this brings a massive amount of depth to the running back room, which could be very, very beneficial with the guys they brought in. Not only throughout free agency, because they did lose out on Raheem Morris. They did let him go, but not Raheem Mostert, not Morris. Anyways, let's get into his overview. Big workload back with a skill set that requires a physical downhill run scheme, which I think can be a very beneficial addition to this Dolphins team. Gordon is a tight-hipped and forced to run linear tracks. He plays with adequate decisiveness and interior vision, but lacks the agility to cut sharply or slip tackles in tight quarters. When he gets going downhill, he becomes a battering ram, slamming through tackles and adding tough yards after contact. He's good in the power screen game and could improve his protection in time. In 2024, his production fell off through no fault of his own. Gordon is big and physical and could attract day two attention from teams looking to add a bruiser of a two-back system. Now, Dolphins got him in day 3, halfway through, and arguably so. I think this was a steal at this spot. He has many strengths. He also has weaknesses. Let's get into those. Some of his strengths is as a big back with frame and demeanor for battling carries, gets going downhill without much dancing, adequate burst, and plus tackle breaking ability between the tackles. Uses stiff arm and shoulders to batter tacklers in space. Possesses an insatiable thirst to score when he smells the paint. Smooth screen release with natural hands. Capable of handling protection. Ask with more work. Weaknesses. Production fall off in 2024. Linear runner with tightness in his lowers. Lacks agility for short area elusiveness. Below average speed to widen the field or hit home runs. Struggles to plant and go quickly on stretch plays. Runs too high and absorbs thunderous shots. Sources tell us he had a bad quarterback play, a subpar line, and every defense was keyed on stopping him. Just watch his 2023 tape and skip 2024. An NFC National Scout. Now, while I do agree with that, you don't want to dig too deep into some of those, excuses of, lack of line play or quarterback wasn't that great. Look, everyone going into the season knew how good Ollie Gordon was. And yes, did they key in on him? 100%. I, for one, watched a lot of his games, and I saw the fact that they were stacking the box on him, especially with the type of runner he is, that he's very straightforward type of runner. He's going to run through you, not around you. And those are some things that the Dolphins definitely need in the running back room. While Devon Achane does pretty well at that, he's more of a stretch type of guy, more elusive, more shifty. Pretty much everything that Ollie Gordon isn't. So I think the tandem of these two potentially in the future could be one for, something that is going to be very interesting and something that this Dolphins team has been lacking because I do feel that, the production last year from Raheem Mostert was very subpar and very upsetting as Dolphins fans from seeing what he produced in the previous year. That put a lot of weight on Devon Achane's shoulders. And unfortunately, I do think he needs to help with spreading out the running load here. And got a perfect running mate with him here in Ollie Gordon. It's a very complimentary type of guy. When you have the shifty guy in Devon Achane who can turn it on and burn you. And then on top of that, you have Ollie Gordon coming in who can run through most guys. It's going to be very interesting to see. But with that being said, we're going to move on to round 7 at pick 231. And the Dolphins selected Quinn Ewers out of Texas, quarterback. And man, oh man, this one was an interesting one for me. Now, I don't hate the pick at all. I do think the Dolphins need to bring in a young guy who's going to be on the roster for a while and really back up Tua here. The past couple of years, Dolphins have not had prominent backup quarterbacks. And when they did, they didn't need them. And when they didn't, they needed them. So I think this was a very good selection given the recent history the Dolphins have had with the struggles of Tua's health, unfortunately. It is what it is. I think injuries are a natural thing in the NFL. It's a very, very taxing sport, and guys are going to go down pretty much often. So bring in depth in positions of need, and that is in the quarterback spot. I definitely love the addition of Quinn Ewers here. A highly touted after player coming out of high school. He was well regarded in his time with Texas. Unfortunately, he did have to leave Ohio State, but it is what it is. You know, great quarterbacks in this league have left Ohio State and have done well for themselves, a la Joe Burrow. But yeah, Quinn Ewers made a name for himself in Texas, and the shadow that was looming of Arch Manning definitely didn't help his case on the prominence of him. But I do think this is arguably one of the steals of the draft as well for the Miami Dolphins. I love Quinn Ewers at this spot. I think, should he have to play, I think he has the ability to really make some noise for this Dolphins team. So hopefully, we don't have to see him, but I do love to at the starting quarterback position. But if he does come in, at least I have a little more confidence than I did probably in the previous years with guys like Skylar Thompson. And the fact that we were able to get him in the 7th round with all the quarterback controversy regarding this draft, I do think that this was, a really good, solid pick here. Now let's talk about Quinn Ewers and his history. In high school, he was regarded as the number 1 overall prospect nationally. In 2021, he was redshirted in Ohio State. He did reclassify early to, get into Ohio State earlier, but did not end up seeing the field. In 2022, started 10 games. Not going to go through all the stats, but he did have an unfortunate shoulder injury suffered against Alabama. It only took him out for 3 games. He did come back and, still put up a pretty decent season. So I can say here. In 2023, honorable mention, all Big 12 Conference, ranked 10th in FBS with its completion percentage at 69, and set school record with 19 straight completions against Oklahoma. And moving forward, we're going to go on to 2024. He was named 2nd team All ACC, tied for 6th in FBS with 31 passing touchdowns. He started 14 games. He missed 2 games to an unfortunate oblique injury and threw a touchdown pass in each of his last 27 games. That's a guy who can find the end zone and put it in for your team and get you on the board. And that's something you really want. And that's something that the Dolphins lacked at the quarterback position last year when Tua was not in the starting lineup. Other things so we can talk about, he was featured on the cover art for EA Sports College Football 2025. So, this was a guy who was highly regarded heading into the previous season. Had a pretty good year, and, his tenure in Texas was pretty good. They were constantly competing in the college football playoffs. Before and after, when they extended the playoffs, he was still part of those teams and still a dominant force, and, handed over a better off Texas than what he found it. And, I was very proud to see what Quinn Ewers was able to do there in Texas. Now, let's talk about some of his his draft overviews and stuff. Ewers' arm talent and game flashes are enticing, but he hasn't learned to play the game with a high enough level of consistency. The tape of road wins over Alabama and Michigan over the last 2 seasons showed the clearest picture of Ewers' ceiling. He spins it with sudden release and good touch over the first 2 levels and makes it look easy when he finds a rhythm. He won a high percentage of his career starts, but struggled to put points on the board in the most big games in 2024. Ewers rarely operates as a smooth, full field reader. He often predetermines his target and throws into coverage instead of taking what the defense is offering. A lack of escapability will require him to possess quickly enough to stay ahead of the NFL blitz packages. The raw talent and upside will be alluring for pro-style passing attacks. But it is fair to wonder if he will ever be able to rise above the talent on his roster and the ability of his play caller to create favorable terms. A couple strengths and weaknesses here for him. He displays willingness to go out and compete through pain, performs in road games at Alabama and Michigan stand out, makes it look easy when he's working on rhythm, arm talent to make trick shot throws from a variety of angles, gets the ball out in a hurry with just a flick of a wrist, showed great pocket mobility to slide and deliver in 2023, has games where footwork is clean and delivery is sharp, capable of making tough throws from off-platform, throws with consistent accuracy on boot action rollouts. I do think this is a very well-versed quarterback and has the potential to, do almost anything that's asked of him. And that's something that's great for this Miami Dolphins team. especially when the occasion may come around that Tua is not available to play. I do like this ability that Quinn Ewers brings to the table. Now, let's talk about some weaknesses. Can be fooled from pre-snap to post-snap looks by defenses. Needs better eye manipulation to hold safeties and linebackers. Gets stuck on first read regardless of coverage. Stares at primary receivers and will throw them into collisions. Lazy footwork forces receivers to break stride and make a catch. Will throw late to put too much air under some downfield throws. Must improve his feel and response to edge pressure. These are all very valid weaknesses, and these are things that he's going to be working with as being the backup quarterback. Now, the Dolphins did not draft him to take over to a starting spot. As much as people are out there who want to troll and say, "Oh, Tua's replacement." No, this is Tua's team, and God forbid he goes down. Quinn Ewers will be in there to step up and hopefully help deliver when needed, because that was something the Dolphins lacked last season with the rotation of quarterbacks that they had between Skylar Thompson, Tim Boyle, and Tyler Huntley, who actually stepped up pretty well towards the later half of the season, but a little too late for him. While his time with the Dolphins was interesting, I definitely think it was more so a system problem than a Tyler Huntley problem. And the Dolphins didn't conform to him. They tried making him conform to the Dolphins. That's why I think he struggled, but neither here or there. Let's talk more so about the following and final pick for the Miami Dolphins, and that was defensive tackle Zeek Biggers out of Georgia Tech. This guy, it's just like his name, big dude, and he has all the ability to be a massive defensive tackle in the future. But there's a lot of raw and tangible stuff. Things that I do love about him, and then there's also things that I'm like, man, like this guy can really get this down. He can be a very good defensive tackle. But really, what the Dolphins really liked about him is his size and stature, and his ability to bring his up these mitts and bat some balls at the line of scrimmage alongside with some field goal special team stuff. So yeah, very interesting selection here by Miami Dolphins. Walked away to draft with addressing defensive line 3 times and offensive line once through the draft. So definitely a little upset in that sense. I felt like the Dolphins should have, honed in a little bit more on getting some younger offensive line talent and seeing what they can develop, or so on and so forth. Pulling for some guys there, but it is what it is. Let's talk about some of his career accolades. In 2021, he played 9 games as a reserve with 9 tackles, missed the final 2 due to injury. 22, he played in all 12 games as a reserve, had 32 tackles, tackle for a loss, pass breakup, and a block kick. Honorable mention, all ACC, and started all 12 games in 2023. He had 40 tackles, 4 tackles for a loss, 1 sack, and 3 pass breakups with a block kick. And then in 2024, honorable mention, all ACC, tied for 4th in FBS with 2 block kicks, started all 13 games. Now, the tackle production definitely went down by half. He went with 23 tackles, 3.5 tackles for a loss, 1 sack, 3 pass breakups, and 2 block kicks. So definitely some things to notice is that this guy knows how to get in areas to 1, block kicks, and 2, block passes. So definitely, someone who's instinctive and can get their hands up, not only on defense but also on special teams is big time, and definitely going to find himself a spot on this roster, if at the very worst as a special teamer. But neither here nor there. I think this is a very interesting selection, but overall, I'm very happy with where the Dolphins got him and what he can bring to this team moving forward. Now let's talk about his overview. On paper, Zeke has the measurables that teams search for along a defensive front, but he lacks the build of an NFL interior defender. He'll flash with a big punch and drive a guard off his spot, but he logs too many reps where he is slow into contact and jostled around at the point. He's slow getting off the blocks and misses too many tries. Biggers offers no rush help. He needs to get stronger and take advantage of his length, and he will have to improve himself as a 3-4 defensive end in the pros. So here are some of his strengths. He has height, weight, and length of an NFL 3-4 defensive end, bypasses, block for a quick win, and stunt rep over and arm over. Traits for better read and react with better strength / technique, reads quarterback eyes, and gets big hands into passing lane. That's one of his biggest strengths, is finding what passing lane or kicking lane is going to be and getting his mitts up in there. Weaknesses: slow off the ball and into first contact, below average anchor, and contact balance to rep his gap. Unable to separate and quickly shuck blocks, lumbers forward in space, missing too many tackles, poor sack and pressure production as a rusher. While I do agree with all that, overall, I think his production in the collegiate level was slightly, ever so slightly above average. And the fact that, I'm going to keep on pressing on this, gets his big mitts up there, he's able to really make a key difference, not only on defense, but also on special teams. And that's something that lots and lots of teams aspire for. And I'm happy the Dolphins were able to address that when it came to so on and so forth. Now, with that concluded, that consists of the Miami Dolphins draft class. I left this draft class, thinking, man, they really found some interesting ways to address some needs. Do I think they went a little overboard on the defensive line? I do. I do like the additions of each defensive lineman, though. And that's something that I definitely took away. And I'm like, you know what? As much as I may not be a massive fan of these picks and maybe where they were selected or so on and so forth, more projects type of guys, I do like what each and every single one of them bring to the table. And then on top of that, addressing other needs like cornerback, safety. I think those were massive, massive additions along with the offensive line. I wish that they would have drafted maybe one more offensive lineman. Wonder where they would have fit that one in and who they may have not selected if that would have been the case. So those are things that when you are overviewing this entire draft class, those are things you take away from it. But all in all, I think it was a very solid draft class for Miami Dolphins. And moving forward, I do think they made some big-time additions in the undrafted free agent market. And we're going to get to that in another video. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching. I know it's a long one. Wanted to go a little in-depth for you guys here. And definitely, spend the time talking about these guys, what they bring to the table. Obviously, pros and cons, etc., etc. Very happy you guys were stuck to this far. If you did, leave a nice big thumbs up. Let me know how much you liked this video and who was your favorite draft pick. Comment that one down below. I'll get you guys in the next one. Peace.